Joining once again, soccer's Kristian Jack, just outside of Team Canada's hotel here in downtown Los Angeles. Now, you just spoke to Alistair Johnston. I spoke to Moise Bobito, and there is a palpable sense of disappointment here in Los Angeles among the Canadian men's national team. But on social media, KJ, we certainly saw that the Canadian public was very disappointed at Canada's missed opportunity to get to a final. So are we now at a point, you think, where the Canadian public is kind of justified, giving everything that we have seen this Canadian men's national team under Jesse Marsch do up until this point, to be disappointed, underwhelmed by last night's performance?
Yeah, I think they're entirely justified. First of all, it's great that there's a pulse there.
Yeah.
It's great that they care.
Yeah.
No, I mean, after obviously the fantastic work that we saw in Copa America, and obviously across TSN's coverage in OneSoccer as well, to see what we continue to do to elevate these guys, that people care about them. There's a connection there, and there's a real expectation, Matthew, that they go into a game last night believing that Canada can win. I do think there are some areas where we have to look and analyze the game a little bit differently. And speaking to some talent evaluators over the last 18 hours or so, there's a lot of factors in this. A lot of Canadian players coming in were out of form, injured, and that's the national team variable.
The travel that they have, yeah.
As well. That's the national team variable. People can listen at home and think excuses, and they'd be I think in the right to do that, but they are facts, right? I think that Mexico reached a level and a high ceiling that Canada aren't at yet, but I look at the game and I think of how Canada responded to that goal early on. Alistair Johnston told me something I thought was really interesting. I thought the same thing watching it. You and I talked about it at the time. 5 or 10 minutes into that game, it could have got out of hand. He said past years, 2 or 3 years ago, that could have been 2 or 3-0 at that time, but they stayed in that game. They could have had a decision go their way with the penalty. So I think they're managing those game moments. The next step now is to try and take over them, and when they get the moments, when they get Mexico in a low block in the second half, how do you open them up? That's key.
And the one thing that Moise Bobito told me is that level of savviness, right? Now that Jesse Marsch has raised the level a notch, and he spoke to Canada about this when he met them initially last spring in the Netherlands, that this isn't a pursuit of excellence. If you want to be a professional, if you want to achieve something, then the highest standards require the highest level of composure, especially in a game like this. So they're going to have to need that savviness again against the Americans, because the Americans are coming into this game with bruised egos as well after conceding a very late winner to Panama. So a result against the United States, how significant could that be, knowing that this whole entire component of the Canadian men's national team, the talent that's here, they're not going to have that come the Gold Cup in the summer?
That's the biggest moment, is the fact that now, as I said, these opportunities are very, very infrequent now leading towards the World Cup. It's 15 months away, Matt, but this is really now a competitive game. Then the Gold Cup comes without the majority of their best players who are going to be playing in their clubs in the summer. And suddenly now you're running out of international windows to get that ready. Of course, a United States game, you're always going to be motivated for that. There's also a factor that they beat them in September, their first win since 1957 away from home against the United States. Significant moment under Marsch, and they don't want to give that back. They've got that momentum over them at the moment. Alistair Johnston and other players have told me that as well. So there's a lot on the line, a lot riding on this, and look, it's a competitive game in front of a big crowd. It should be a good one.
And the one thing that Moise Bobito said before the game, Captain Alphonso Davies told his Canadian teammates, whatever happens against Mexico, going into that third place game, which is now a huge game against the Americans, we have to stick together.